I wanted to share with you how I do the composition for my illustrations. And for me, doing a composition, it's planning out how it's going to look, how the illustration itself is going to look, and that's planning what's going to be on the page and what's not going to show up on the page. And I kind of like to think about it like setting the stage for a play, because when you have a play, you have your the backdrop, and you have the characters, and then you have the props that are going to help with whatever the characters need to be doing. So you have your stage, and if we convert that analogy or whatever you'd call it, so our stage is going to be our canvas. So that's going to be the canvas, the paper that we're working on. And so for ours, this represents our stage, the 7.5 inches by 11.5 inches, and also this way, the vertical. And then since we need to have the bleed along the edges, we know that, say, the top 1/4 of an inch is going to potentially be cut off. The same way with this outside here and the bottom. So we have a 1/4 of an inch where the illustration needs to go to that point, extend beyond that point to the outer edges, but we need to make sure that nothing important is there. So it's just like sky or whatever kind of up here, and then grass or whatever's going to be down along the bottom. But you want to make sure the important parts of your illustration are well away from the edges so that nothing important gets cut off. So also another important thing to note for composition is you kind of want to imagine that you've got 2 lines going down here dividing the page or the canvas into thirds, and then you've got 2 lines going this way dividing the page into thirds. And then where those lines cross, those are the areas that you want to have as focal points or things that are important. And I'll show you some examples of kind of how I've done that, or well, yeah. So when I'm planning how I'm going to do something, I will ask myself a couple questions. I ask myself these all the time. One is, what do I want to do, and how do other people do it? And so that involves doing things like looking at mentor texts, looking at how-to videos or posts. Like I'll Google, if I want to draw something like a wizard's hat or whatever, it's like how to draw a wizard for kids. I'll go to the easy part or the for kids part first, and there's all kinds of different images or videos that will come up, and I'll kind of look through how some of those different ones go, and I'll draw out different things, and then decide from there what I like best and how I want my character to look. But also looking in drawing books or reference photos. I typically will make a Pinterest board where I will save different images or articles for things that I've researched or looked up, and then I can look at those as I'm trying to figure out what I want things to look like. So if we break the composition down into that backdrop, the characters, and the props, when we're looking at setting, it doesn't have to be ornate or elaborate to set the sense of what the setting is. What it has to do is to convey the setting to the audience. And what does it take to do that? Like if you look at Mo Willems in his pigeon books or his Elephant and Piggy, he has very little to set the stage for where that takes place. Like when the pigeon, don't let the pigeon drive the bus, we've got the bus and the bus driver, so we know it's somewhere in a town or whatever that you can have a bus, but we don't have a lot to go on to know any more specifics. But do we need to? Is that something that's important for that story? And then the same with the Elephant and Piggy. And also Mo Willems doesn't always show where the ground is either, so his character is just kind of floating on the page. But again, that works for the way he does it. Also, my husband and I and my mom and stepdad, we saw My Fair Lady up in Pullman years and years ago, and their scene changes were super simple. I can't even remember all the specific details, but like the actors and actresses, when they were coming on stage, they just wheel on the things that were for the change, and it was just fast and simple, and just it didn't take a lot to set the stage for the scene. But so then characters, when you're planning your characters, like what do they look like? You know, like the real ones or made up ones, so either photographs or things from mentor texts or the videos or things on how do you draw a duck. And really the focus for me is on what makes a character that character. Like what makes an elephant an elephant. If you look at Mark Brown's illustrations in Dancing Feet, you know, he had the elephant, obviously the big ears and the trunk, and then they got the big feet. And for this one, he just has this big old round body. And then there's another book that I have that he illustrated. It's called If All the Animals Came Inside. And this one, his elephant is a little less simple, but it's still simple. He's got these simple and these big shapes for the different animals and things. But if we focus on what are those characteristics that make that character what it is, that we know what it is, then that will definitely help on that. Eric Carl's, for his, there's the Mixed Up Chameleon. I got that from the library, but he has this page on there where the chameleon sees a zoo, and then he's got all these different animals that you would see at the zoo. And so they're just kind of simple, and the way he does it is simple, but it's very effective. And it's interesting to see from different collage artists, too, how they do their collage, because it can be simple, but it's so different, like the way they paint their papers or what they use or just how they put things together. Their artistic sensibilities are different, or whatever it is, their styles, I guess you would say. And then if we look at props, so what items need to show up on the page to support the characters and the action in that scene. And so, like if we look at, I did Gary's Fishing Surprise as an illustration that I did, and if we look at what it looks like, so for that, this is closest to what the end looks like. So I needed a fishing pole because he's fishing, and I wanted to have bait, but well, and then he's got his bowl, but there's not a ton of items that need to show up on this page to let us know what's happening. But like for Bo, that's the rainbow fish. You know, I gave him a napkin, and he's got this little fork that he's holding on, and so just things that add to that to make that scene happen. So good questions asked are what has to be there. What, if anything, do I want to add? Because I want it to be there. I want it to be part of the scene, whether it's something somebody else notices or not, like little hidden Easter eggs or whatever. And how can I keep it simple, sweetie? So I wanted to show you how I did the illustration for my first illustration in our story. I wanted to see about what it would look like to scale. And so instead of just doing one side of the page, I did want to do both because I wanted to show the boot cottage, and I wanted it to be big enough you could see details. I also wanted it to be kind of cool to make it feel almost like a treehouse or something where like kids would think it would be fun to live there. But anyway, so I drew the boot, and at first I drew it at the end here to end like that, but then I wanted to build a slide onto it too so the kids could be sliding down, and so I decided just to end it with a curly shoe, and old shoes in the 14th century and stuff were kind of like that. But then I took this illustration and I blew it up to about 150%, and when I was working on this I didn't know yet what our right scale was going to be to change things up. So anyway, but I blew it up to 150% and then came up with this, and this is basically how that shoe turned out, and this line here is the line for the page break. And then you can see there's just little siblings who are in here. For my character design, I looked up how do you draw a wizard for kids, and I kind of came up with some ideas. This was the first little wizard guy I drew, and then I think this was my second one, and then I just had some different kind of ways I was doing him. This is how I decided to go with for the wizard, and then this is what I decided to do for Lizzie, and she's just got a long dress on. And then I made them, I made them bigger so that they would fit the size of the bigger size. And then the other character designs, I just did really simple shapes. I took a piece of tracing paper and I put it up over the page that I had drawn the shoe on. And then I just kind of drew what simple shapes, what they would look like doing their thing. Like, this is the sliding sister. This is a little sister who really wants to climb the ladder, but she can't because she's just too small. And then this is a brother who's climbing up on the lacing for the boot. So after that, I just made those bigger so that it would be to scale so that I could then cut the pieces out. Anyway, I just wanted to share also that we're all set designers, and the way that we see the world and the things that we like, those are all going to give a unique flair to how our illustrations are going to turn out. But I look forward to seeing how your artistic design comes out. Also, I will add pictures at the end from the process for my illustration with the Gary's Dinner Surprise, and probably just that one, so you can see kind of the evolution of how that happened. And I've got little faint lines on there too as I was looking at where those focal points would be. Anyway,